Have you ever wondered what secrets these ancient wonders hide? Welcome to Unearthed Secrets, where history comes alive through timeless stories. Please subscribe to our channel, like the video, and tell us where you're watching from and the time there. Now, let's step into the mysteries of these incredible monuments and artifacts. The Palace of Knossos, where the labyrinth still breathes. The island of Crete lies at the heart of the Aegean, surrounded by restless blue waters that once carried the dreams, fears, and ambitions of entire civilizations. Long before Athens rose, before Rome found its footing, there stood here a city unlike any other, a palace that seemed to pulse with life itself, the Palace of Knossos. Even now, when you walk among its ruins, it feels less like stone and more like memory, as though the air itself still holds the rhythm of footsteps that once crossed its courtyards. The sun glints across crumbling walls and pillars painted deep red, and the shadows seem to move with quiet intention, as if something ancient is still awake beneath the soil. It begins, as all legends do, with a story that was once real. Crete was the cradle of the Minoans, one of the earliest great civilizations of Europe. They were traders, artists, engineers, and dreamers, a people who built in curves instead of corners, whose walls sang with color, whose art showed no war, only nature, dance, and devotion. Around 1900 BCE, they raised the Palace of Knossos, part royal residence, part temple, part labyrinth of power. The word labyrinth itself may have come from this place, from labrys, the sacred double axe, carved into stone and painted on walls as a symbol of divine authority. Here, myth and life intertwined so deeply that even archaeologists, centuries later, would struggle to separate what was ritual from what was real. When the British archaeologist Arthur Evans began excavating Knossos in 1900, he thought he had found not just ruins but a myth made solid. The stones whispered names he had only read in legend: King Minos, Daedalus, the Minotaur, and the endless corridors that trapped him. Evans imagined this palace as the labyrinth itself, a structure so vast and intricate that even the king who ruled it could lose his way. And as you stand before the maze of rooms, corridors, and stairways, it's easy to see why. Knossos wasn't a palace in the simple sense, it was a living organism. It grew, it breathed, it changed. Sunlight would pour through high windows and fall across courtyards paved in gypsum. Columns, narrow at the base and wider at the top, gave the illusion of movement, almost like trees in a breeze. The air smelled faintly of olive oil, beeswax, and the sea. Every wall, once painted in colors that burned against the stone, cinnabar reds, cobalt blues, ochre yellows, and in those colors the Minoans painted life. Bull leapers soaring mid-air over horns, women with bare shoulders and curling hair, dolphins leaping through waves, lilies swaying as though caught in wind. To walk through Knossos was to walk through a story painted in motion, but deep below the painted chambers, under the light and laughter, the earth held silence. Stone corridors branched and doubled back. Storerooms, some large enough to echo, were lined with great clay jars, pithoi that once held oil, grain, and wine. Beneath the palace floor, the temperature dropped. The air grew heavy. Down there, in the dark, the myth of the Minotaur begins to whisper. The story goes that King Minos of Crete, beloved of the god Poseidon, defied him by keeping a sacred bull meant for sacrifice. As punishment, Poseidon cursed his queen Pasiphae to bear a monstrous child, half man, half bull. Ashamed but unwilling to kill his son, Minos ordered the great craftsman Daedalus to build a labyrinth so complex that none who entered could find their way out. It's a myth, yes, but when you stand in the underbelly of Knossos, where corridors twist and chambers vanish into shadow, the distinction between legend and architecture begins to blur. The walls echo softly, as though remembering the sound of something heavy breathing in the dark. Archaeologists debate whether the labyrinth was ever real, but perhaps that's the wrong question. Perhaps the labyrinth was not a single structure, but the palace itself. A metaphor for power, for faith, for the inescapable complexity of the human mind. Up above, life flourished. The palace had running water, pipes carrying fresh spring water through the walls, drains and baths centuries ahead of their time. Light wells filled the interior with brightness even at midday. Servants moved quietly along corridors, carrying amphorae of oil. Musicians played harps and flutes in courtyards where olive trees grew in terracotta pots. And somewhere, above all others, the royal family lived, their chambers decorated with frescoes of griffins and wild landscapes. The Queen's Megaron, as it is now called, held walls painted with lilies and dolphins, symbols of purity and freedom. And in her room, archaeologists found something extraordinary, the remains of the world's first known flushing toilet. But Knossos was more than beauty. It was a heartbeat of faith. The Minoans worshipped nature itself, the mountains, the sea, the cycles of life and death. Their most sacred symbol was the bull, the creature that represented strength, fertility, and the divine power of renewal. Bull leaping, a ritual where young men and women vaulted over a charging bull, was both sport and ceremony. It's depicted again and again on the palace walls. A figure mid-flight, hands gripping the bull's horns, body stretched in an impossible arc. Scholars still argue whether this was myth or performance, but perhaps it was both. A dance between danger and grace, between human courage and divine challenge. There was no sharp divide between faith and life here. The Minoans built shrines within the palace, tucked into corners, marked with offerings, shells, pottery, small clay figurines. Candles flickered in the dark, their light trembling across painted gods. And yet, even the most beautiful civilizations carry shadows. Around 1450 BCE, disaster came. Perhaps an earthquake, perhaps the eruption of the volcano at Thera, now Santorini, which sent tsunamis crashing against Crete's shores. The palace burned, the walls blackened, the ceilings collapsed. In the ashes the colors faded, the laughter and songs vanished. When the flames died, the Minoans never fully returned. The ruins remained, silent, waiting, and for more than 3,000 years, the wind and dust kept the palace company. Shepherds grazed goats across its stones. Unaware, they walked over the bones of Europe's first civilization. Then came Evans, and with him, imagination. He unearthed the palace chamber by chamber, layer by layer, until the stones began to speak again. But in restoring Knossos, Evans also painted over it, literally. He hired artists to recreate the frescoes as he imagined them. He rebuilt walls, columns and rooms, not always as they were, but as he wished them to be. Today, when you stand in Knossos, you see both the ancient and the imagined. The original stones whisper beneath modern plaster. Time and dream blend into one vision. Half ruin, half resurrection. Still, there's something undeniably alive about it. The grand staircase rises like a breath. The throne room still holds its alabaster seat, shaped to fit a presence long vanished. The griffin fresco gazes across the empty air, as if awaiting its queen. And when the evening sun turns the columns crimson, it feels as if the palace is inhaling light once more. Visitors walk slowly here. They lower their voices without being told to. Perhaps because Knossos doesn't feel dead. It feels paused, like a story mid-sentence. Some say that deep under the ruins, there are still sealed chambers, places Evans never reached, passages that twist beneath the earth where ancient air still sleeps. And in those spaces, they say, the labyrinth breathes. Not a place, but an idea. The living memory of a civilization that built beauty out of mystery, faith out of light, and myth out of memory. When you stand at Knossos, surrounded by ruins and sunlight, you realize that the labyrinth was never meant to trap monsters. It was meant to hold time, to keep alive the pulse of a people who once believed that art, ritual, and nature were one and the same. The walls may have fallen, but the spirit remains. You can feel it in the stillness of the air, in the curve of a staircase that leads nowhere, in the painted eyes that still watch after 4,000 years. And so, the Palace of Knossos endures, not as a ruin, but as a heartbeat carved in stone, painted in color, whispered through myth. A place where every corridor leads to memory, and every shadow hums softly with life. A labyrinth that never truly ended, only changed shape. Even now, as the wind moves across Crete's hills and the sea sighs against its shores, you can almost hear it, the slow, ancient breathing of the palace that will never sleep. The Palace of Knossos, where the labyrinth still breathes. The Temple of Heaven, where emperors spoke. Under the pale light of dawn, the Temple of Heaven emerges from the mist, like a vision half-remembered. The air is still cool, brushed by the scent of pine, and the faint sound of a city waking beyond the walls. The stones underfoot are worn smooth from centuries of careful steps. Emperors, priests, attendants, and now, the quiet shuffle of visitors tracing paths once reserved for the divine. There is a feeling here, one that arrives not in sight or sound, but in stillness, a hush that seems to descend from the heavens themselves. The Temple of Heaven was never meant to impress by sheer scale alone, though it stretches across an expanse greater than even the Forbidden City. It was meant to align, every wall, every gate, every platform drawn to correspond with the celestial order. In ancient China, harmony was not just an aspiration, it was a law that bound the earth to the sky. The emperor, known as the Son of Heaven, stood at the intersection of both realms. His prayers were not for conquest or wealth, but for balance. The balance that fed crops, filled rivers, and gave shape to every life beneath the heavens. Built during the early 15th century under the reign of Emperor Yongle, the Temple of Heaven reflected both ambition and humility. Yongle had already commanded the construction of the Forbidden City and moved the imperial capital to Beijing. Yet he knew that earthly splendor meant little if the heavens turned away. So, amid cypress groves and open sky, he raised a place where he could speak, not to men, but to the divine order itself. The layout follows a logic both mystical and mathematical. The northern end of the complex, where the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvest stands, represents heaven, the circle, infinite and perfect. The southern end, with its square foundations, represents the earth, Between them lies the Emperor's Path, the long stone causeway symbolizing the bridge between the human and celestial. This wasn't merely architecture, it was philosophy rendered in marble and tile. At the heart of the temple complex stands the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvests, perhaps the most recognizable structure in all of China. Rising 3 tiers high, its blue-glazed roof reflects the colors of the sky. From a distance, it appears to float, a vast circular pavilion supported by 28 massive wooden pillars, each one representing a division of the solar calendar. Not a single nail was used in its construction. It stands by weight, balance, and ancient joinery, as though the very principles of heaven were holding it together. Inside, the hall once held altars, silk banners, and the emperor's ritual tablets. During the ceremony of prayer, every movement was codified, every sound precise. The emperor would ascend in silence, his robes trailing over cold stone. Behind him came the attendants bearing incense and offerings, sacrificial jade, bronze vessels, silk scrolls, and animals chosen according to celestial color. Blue for spring, red for summer, white for autumn, black for winter. There was no audience, no applause, only the sound of wind passing through the eaves and the deep rhythmic tone of ritual bells. The emperor would bow to the 4 directions, then kneel before the altar, his head touching the marble 3 times. When he prayed, his voice carried upward, dissolving into the cold morning air. It was not for himself that he spoke, but for the millions who lived and farmed beneath his mandate. The cycle of rain and harvest was his burden, the balance of heaven his duty. Farther south lies the imperial vault of heaven, a smaller circular hall encircled by the echo wall. The name is no exaggeration. A whisper spoken at one end can be heard perfectly at the other, traveling along the curved surface of the marble like a secret carried by air itself. Legend says the wall was built to symbolize how prayers reach heaven, instantly, invisibly, and without distortion. Scholars of course explain it through acoustics, but the experience remains magical nonetheless. Stand there, murmur a word, and feel the ancient air answer back. Beyond that stands the circular mound altar, perhaps the most sacred space in the entire complex. It is open to the sky, with no roof or walls to separate the emperor from the cosmos. 3 terraces rise one above another, each level paved with concentric rings of marble. The numbers here are not arbitrary, they repeat in 9s, the most sacred number in Chinese cosmology. 9 steps lead to each level, and at the very center lies the heart of heaven, a single round stone perfectly aligned to the cardinal directions. During the winter solstice, the emperor would come here before dawn, purified through days of fasting and meditation. As the first light broke over the horizon, he would ascend to the top of the altar and stand on that central stone. When he spoke, his words echoed in all directions, magnified by the geometry of the platform. To those who witnessed it, it must have seemed as if the sky itself was answering. The rituals performed here were breathtaking in their precision. Hundreds of musicians, dancers, and priests moved as one, their steps aligned with the rhythm of drums and gongs. The ceremony could last hours, unfolding like a slow conversation between the emperor and the cosmos. Offerings were burned, prayers recited, and the scent of incense rose skyward in curling trails, vanishing into the pale morning. For the people of China, these ceremonies were more than religious observances. They were reassurance, proof that the emperor still held the mandate of heaven. In Confucian thought, the emperor was not divine, but chosen. If floods, droughts, or earthquakes struck, they were seen as signs that the balance had been disturbed, that perhaps heaven was displeased. Thus, each prayer at the Temple of Heaven was both devotion and duty, a renewal of cosmic legitimacy. Time, however, erodes all things. Dynasties fell, rituals faded, and the empire fractured, yet the temple endured, quiet as stone and sky. When the last emperor, Puyi, walked its grounds in the early 20th century, he did so not as a ruler, but as a remnant of another age. The altars were empty, the drums silent. Still, the wind carried the same chill, and the cypress trees whispered as they always had. In the decades that followed, war and revolution swept across China. The temple survived bombings, political turmoil, and neglect. When restoration began, craftsmen worked by hand, recreating roof tiles with ancient methods, polishing marble steps worn thin by centuries. By the late 20th century, the Temple of Heaven was no longer a forbidden sanctuary. It became a public park, a place of quiet recreation and memory. Today, at sunrise, the grounds are alive again, but in a gentler way. Elderly men practice Tai Chi under the cypress trees. Women sing softly, their voices drifting like prayer through the morning haze. Musicians play the erhan bamboo flute, their notes mingling with birdsong. Children run along the ancient stones, unaware that their laughter now echoes where emperors once prayed for rain. The temple remains perfectly symmetrical, perfectly balanced, a reminder of the unity that once bound heaven, earth, and humankind. Tourists pause at the heart of heaven stone, marveling at its acoustics, its geometry, its perfection. Some close their eyes and whisper wishes. It doesn't matter that no emperor stands there now, the heavens still listen, indifferent to titles. The temple of heaven is more than the sum of its structures. It is a philosophy carved in stone. It teaches that order and beauty arise from harmony, not force, that even the mightiest ruler must kneel before the sky, and that beneath all ceremony lies something profoundly simple: gratitude for existence itself. When twilight falls, the marble glows with the faint warmth of the setting sun. Shadows lengthen across the circular courtyards. The blue roofs turn indigo, mirroring the deepening heavens above. In that moment, everything aligns again: the earth below, the sky above, and the silence between them. It is easy to imagine an emperor standing there still, his robes rustling softly in the wind, not as a figure of power, but as a man alone before the infinite, speaking words that no one else could hear. Words meant only for the sky, for the balance that holds the world together, for the eternal rhythm that humankind has always tried to understand. And as the stars begin to appear, faint and watchful over Beijing, the temple of heaven breathes once more, quietly, endlessly, where emperors once spoke to the sky. The Parthenon, Athena's eternal marble hymn. High on the rocky plateau of the Acropolis, overlooking the sprawl of Athens, the Parthenon rises against the sky like a hymn carved into stone. The sun strikes its marble columns, turning them from pale ivory to molten gold, then soft rose as evening descends. It has stood here for nearly 2.5 millennia, weathering war, empire, explosion, and neglect. Yet even in ruin, it remains one of the purest symbols of human aspiration, beauty built in honor of wisdom. When it was first completed in 438 BCE, the Parthenon was not merely a temple, it was a declaration of triumph, of order, of balance between mortal hands and divine ideal. The Athenians, led by Pericles, had emerged victorious from the Persian Wars. Their city had been burned and rebuilt, their empire expanded across the Aegean. Now atop the Acropolis, they sought to create a structure that would reflect not just power, but the perfection of reason and form. An offering worthy of Athena, their protector and the goddess of wisdom and war. The project was entrusted to two men, the architect Iktinos and the sculptor Phidias. Together they conceived a building that would defy time. The Parthenon followed the Doric order, the simplest of Greek architectural styles, yet it elevated simplicity into harmony. The columns were not truly straight, they curved subtly inward, compensating for the distortions of human sight. The platform beneath them rose gently toward the center. The columns leaned slightly, every angle, every proportion was adjusted by fractions of a degree. The result was an illusion of perfect symmetry, a temple that seemed alive, breathing with the precision of a living form. It was built of Pentelic marble, quarried from nearby Mount Pentelicus, whose stone contained a faint shimmer of iron that caught sunlight like trapped fire. In the 5th century BCE, this marble would have gleamed pure white, its edges sharp, its carvings crisp. The temple's massive columns, 46 in total, rose 40 feet high, surrounding the central chamber like a marble forest. Inside that chamber, the cella, stood the reason for its existence, the colossal statue of Athena Parthenos. Phidias' statue was said to be a wonder of the world, 40 feet tall, fashioned of gold and ivory. She stood in full armor, a spear in one hand, and a small figure of Nike, the goddess of victory, in the other. Her eyes were inlaid with gems, her shield embossed with scenes of gods and giants locked in eternal battle. To the Athenians who entered the temple, she must have seemed less a sculpture and more a living deity, caught in the moment before she would speak. The gleam of her gold reflected in the polished marble floor, shimmering like sunlight on water. But the Parthenon was not only a house of worship, it was a treasury, the heart of Athenian democracy's wealth. Within its strong chambers lay the tribute of allied cities, gold coins and ingots gathered under Athens' protection. To build such a structure was as much a political act as a religious one. The Acropolis became both a sanctuary and a statement. Here stood the city that had turned art and thought into empire. From a distance, the Parthenon appears still, serene, and silent, yet it once pulsed with sound. On feast days, the Panathenaic procession wound its way through Athens, up the sacred way to the Acropolis. Citizens, soldiers, priests, and young maidens carried offerings of oil and cloth to the goddess. At the climax of the festival, a new peplos, a robe woven with depictions of Athena's victories, was presented to the great statue inside. Music rose from flutes and drums, the scent of burning incense drifted upward. Prayers and chants mingled with the cicadas. In those moments, the Parthenon was alive, its marble echoing with the heartbeat of an entire civilization. The sculptural decoration that adorned the Parthenon was no less breathtaking. Around its outer frieze, carved in high relief, stretched the Panathenaic procession itself, horsemen, chariots, elders, maidens, and gods depicted in graceful motion. On the metopes, scenes of mythic conflict played out. Greeks battling Amazons, gods clashing with giants, the Lapiths fighting centaurs, the Trojan War unfolding in miniature. Each carving carried layers of meaning, the struggle between chaos and order, barbarism and civilization, passion and reason. At either end of the temple, the pediments told the stories of Athena herself, her miraculous birth from the head of Zeus on one side, and her contest with Poseidon for the patronage of Athens on the other. These were not just mythic tales, they were symbols of the city's identity, carved into the stone that crowned its skyline. As centuries passed, the Parthenon's meaning changed, yet it never ceased to command reverence. When Christianity swept through the ancient world, it became a church dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Frescoes covered its marble, and hymns echoed where pagan prayers had once risen. Later, under Ottoman rule, it was transformed again, this time into a mosque, complete with a minaret rising from its corner. Through each transformation, the structure endured, adapting as though unwilling to die. But fate is cruel even to perfection. In 1687, during the Venetian siege of Athens, the Parthenon used by the Ottomans as a gunpowder store was struck by cannon fire. The explosion tore through its heart, roof and columns collapsed, statues shattered into dust. What had stood for over 2,000 years as a symbol of harmony was fractured in a single night. Yet even in ruin, its power persisted. Travelers who saw it spoke of awe and grief in equal measure. In the 19th century, another wound came, not from war, but from ambition. Thomas Bruce, the Earl of Elgin, removed much of the Parthenon's sculptural decoration and transported it to Britain. Those sculptures, now known as the Elgin Marbles, remain in the British Museum to this day, the subject of endless debate and longing. In Athens, the Parthenon stands incomplete, its wounds visible, its voice partly stolen, but its spirit unbroken. Walk the Acropolis today, and you'll feel it. The wind carries the smell of warm stone and olive leaves. The hum of the modern city rises faintly from below. Cars, voices, the steady rhythm of a metropolis that still bears the name of the goddess, to whom this temple was built. Around you, columns rise like ancient sentinels, their fluted surfaces glowing in the afternoon light. Stand between them and look outward. The Aegean shimmers beyond the rooftops, just as it did when Pericles stood here 2,400 years ago. The Parthenon's genius lies not only in its form but in its idea that beauty and reason are inseparable, that human effort can mirror divine perfection. It was designed not to dominate nature, but to harmonize with it. The marble, quarried from the earth, reflects the changing sky. Its proportions echo the rhythm of the human body and the music of numbers. Even in ruin, its geometry feels alive, its silence full of thought. As twilight descends, the columns cast long, soft shadows across the stones. The air cools, the marble pale against the deepening blue of the Athenian sky. From below, the lights of the city begin to glow, flickering like stars. Somewhere among them, philosophers once walked, poets once sang, and soldiers once dreamed of glory. All of them gone, yet the Parthenon remains, immovable, eternal, the soul of a civilization that still shapes the world. And if you stand there long enough, as the night breeze drifts through the ancient columns, you may feel what the Athenians felt long ago, that here, at the edge of the human and the divine, stone can speak, and wisdom has a voice. Angkor Wat, the divine citadel of Vishnu. High in the heart of the Cambodian jungle, where the Mekong and Tonle Sap rivers cradle the land, rises Angkor Wat, a monument of devotion carved from stone and imagination. As the morning mist drifts across the sacred complex, it wraps the towers, galleries, and courtyards in a pale, ethereal light, softening the sharp edges of centuries and leaving only the lingering whisper of devotion and labor. From a distance, the temple appears as a dream, a vision emerging from the dense canopy, as if the gods themselves had lowered it from the heavens to watch over the kingdom below. Constructed in the early 12th century under the reign of King Suryavarman II, Angkor Wat was conceived not merely as a temple, but as a cosmic representation, a physical embodiment of Hindu cosmology. The central towers rise like mountain peaks, symbolizing Mount Meru, the axis of the universe, surrounded by smaller towers and walls that trace the oceans and continents imagined in ancient belief. Every stone, every carving, every alignment of corridors and galleries was deliberate, a manifestation of sacred order. As you enter the temple complex, the first impression is one of enormity and meticulous design. The outer walls form a rectangle over a square kilometer, enclosing a series of concentric galleries, courtyards, and moats. The moat, wide and calm, reflects the temple towers as perfectly as a mirror, turning the structure into an inverted universe suspended on water. Lush trees lean over its edges, their roots dipping into the glassy surface, and occasionally a heron glides across, adding the smallest ripple to the reflection of gods and kings. Walking along the stone causeway that bridges the moat, your footsteps echo softly against the weathered sandstone, and it becomes clear that this was a place of both earthly and divine passage. Statues of Naga serpents coil along the balustrades, their sinuous bodies carved with a precision that captures both elegance and latent power. Each head, each scale, seems alive, as if guarding the approach not only of human pilgrims but also the unseen presence of deities. Inside the first galleries, bas-reliefs stretch across the walls in intricate panoramas, narrating stories from the Hindu epics, the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Warriors ride elephants and horses into battle. Gods descend from the skies on chariots. Celestial dancers, apsaras, glide across walls with flowing garments and serene faces. The carvings are not merely decorative, they are mnemonic devices, teaching and reminding the faithful of virtue, duty, and the eternal struggle between chaos and order. Over the centuries, the colors have faded, yet the depth of the figures, the grace of their posture still conveys motion and life, a silent theater of stone frozen in mid-performance. The galleries lead toward the inner sanctum, where the central towers rise dramatically, their lotus-shaped peaks punctuating the skyline. These towers, the tallest of the complex, are aligned precisely with the solstices, reflecting an understanding of astronomy that is as spiritual as it is scientific. As the sun rises or sets, beams of light fall along specific corridors, illuminating carvings, doorways, or statues in a deliberate display of cosmic order. One can imagine the priests and architects of Suryavarman II's court carefully observing these moments, adjusting stones and angles so that the heavens themselves would acknowledge the king's devotion. Beneath the towers, the sanctuaries once housed the statues of Vishnu, their presence commanding reverence from all who entered. These images, whether of stone or gilded metal, were representations of the divine in human form, reminding worshippers that the earthly king was the intermediary between heaven and earth. Pilgrims would ascend the steep stairs, a physical reflection of spiritual ascent, each step a meditation, each gallery a lesson. The architecture itself teaches patience, humility, and awe. Beyond the central towers, the surrounding courtyards and libraries reveal layers of meaning. Stone lions and guardians keep watch, their expressions both protective and contemplative. The libraries, long halls with empty niches, once stored sacred texts and illuminated manuscripts, echoing with the whisper of inked prayers and the soft turning of pages. One can imagine monks walking quietly through these halls, chanting sutras, their voices mingling with the faint breeze that carries the scent of damp stone, flowering trees, and the distant hum of the jungle. Angkor Wat is also a masterwork of hydraulic engineering. The extensive system of moats, canals, and reservoirs reflects not only symbolic cosmology, but also practical understanding of water management in the monsoon-laden Cambodian plains. Rainwater, canal flow, and seasonal flooding were harnessed to sustain rice paddies and human habitation, demonstrating a civilization capable of harmonizing with its environment. It is a temple that breathes with the rhythm of the land, attuned to the cycles of nature, growth, and decay. Every corner of Angkor Wat speaks of devotion and labor. Hundreds of thousands of artisans, masons, sculptors, and laborers contributed to its creation over decades. Each block of sandstone, some weighing several tons, was transported from quarries many kilometers away, dragged along wooden rails or floated on rivers. The process demanded organization, skill, and unyielding commitment, a communal act of faith rendered in stone. And even now, after centuries of neglect, conflict, and tropical encroachment, the temple stands largely intact, a testament to human vision striving toward the divine. The artistry extends to the countless apsaras carved into the walls, each one unique, with intricate hairstyles, jewelry, and postures. They appear to dance eternally, frozen mid-motion. Yet there is a rhythm to the repetition, a balance between individuality and collective harmony. These celestial dancers are more than decoration. They symbolize fertility, abundance, and the continuous flow of life, qualities the Khmer kings sought to embody in their reign. As sunlight passes through open windows or filters along corridors, their forms are illuminated in ways that seem intentional, as if the sculptors intended them to be lit by heaven itself. Time has left its marks. Moss, lichen, and creeping roots entwine with the stone. Walls have shifted. Some bas-reliefs are worn smooth by centuries of rain. Yet in their weathered surfaces, there is a new kind of beauty, a dialogue between human creation and natural endurance. Here one feels not only the majesty of kings and gods, but also the patient work of centuries of decay and renewal. In this interplay, Angkor Wat teaches that permanence is both physical and spiritual, that stone can outlast flesh, but cannot resist the subtle hand of time. As the sun climbs higher, golden light spills over the eastern causeway, igniting the reflection of the towers on the mirrored waters of the moat. Birds rise in synchronized flight, casting fleeting shadows that dance on the surfaces of carvings. Monkeys leap among the nearby trees, their curious eyes observing silent pilgrims who wander the courtyards in awe. And in this stillness, one realizes that Angkor Wat is more than architecture. It is a living memory, a convergence of artistry, spirituality, and human aspiration. Even today, the temple continues to inspire devotion. Pilgrims and tourists alike climb its steps, tracing the same paths walked by kings and priests. At dawn, the horizon blushes pink and gold. At dusk, the towers glow amber, silhouetted against the burning sky. Each moment, each season, brings a new encounter with the ancient sacred, a reminder that the past is never truly gone, and that Angkor Wat continues to breathe through those who behold it. This is a place where human ambition meets divine order, where every carved face, every soaring tower, every subtle alignment with sun and moon speaks of a civilization reaching toward eternity. It is at once a palace, a temple, a cosmogram, and a poem in stone. Walking through its galleries, one is transported beyond centuries, beyond kings and commoners, beyond the limits of time itself. The whispers of prayers, chants, and devotion linger like a soft wind through the corridors, reminding all who enter that here, the sacred and the human are inseparably entwined. And as night falls over the Cambodian plains, stars mirrored in the reflective waters of the moat, the silhouette of Angkor Wat stands firm. The jungle hums around it, and the temple itself seems to exhale, a long, patient breath, timeless and unbroken. It is a place where the past is always present, where stone and spirit converse, where the dreams of Surya Varman II and his people continue to resonate across centuries, inviting every visitor to pause, to wonder, and to become part of its eternal story. As the first light of dawn brushes the horizon, Angkor Wat reveals another layer of its silent grandeur, the eastern facade catching the rising sun and setting the central towers ablaze in warm gold. The complex, vast, and deliberate, unfolds like a living manuscript, each gallery and courtyard a paragraph, each relief and carving a line of sacred verse. In this stillness, one begins to understand that Angkor Wat was never merely stone and mortar. It was a canvas of devotion, a testament to the human desire to capture the infinite within finite form. Venturing deeper into the galleries, one cannot help but be drawn to the bas-reliefs that spiral along the walls, vast narratives carved with such precision that they seem to pulse with life. The churning of the ocean of milk, a central myth of Hindu cosmology, stretches across an entire corridor. Vishnu rides atop the cosmic serpent, Ananta, gods and demons pulling at the rope of creation, their faces etched with determination, ecstasy, and struggle. Every detail is intentional, the tension in muscles, the sway of garments, the expressions of divine and mortal beings, all rendered with a sensitivity that transcends time. As you move through the corridors, the scale of human and divine endeavor becomes clear. The artisans who created these works understood not only stone but storytelling, the movement of light, and the rhythm of human vision. Walking slowly, almost reverently, one's gaze traces the lines of heroes and deities, following their gestures, contemplating their expressions. In each scene, there is a balance between narrative and pattern, chaos and order, reflecting the very principles upon which the Khmer Empire was founded. The inner courtyards invite a different kind of meditation. Open to the sky, they are framed by galleries that rise in tiers, each level representing not only architectural mastery, but symbolic ascent. The staircases are steep, a deliberate choice that slows the pilgrim's pace, fostering introspection and a physical awareness of elevation. Each step becomes part of a ritual, a silent acknowledgement that approaching the sacred requires effort, humility, and respect. The interplay of shadow and light changes as the sun arcs across the sky, revealing new facets of reliefs, highlighting apsaras in motion and casting guardians into dramatic silhouettes. Outside, the moat continues its reflective vigil, a shimmering boundary between the mortal world and the divine cosmos represented within the temple walls. The water itself holds secrets. Fish, lotus flowers, and small amphibians inhabit its calm surface, moving without disturbing the mirrored towers. Across centuries, the moat has mirrored both sun and storm, war and peace, the ambitions of kings and the quiet footsteps of pilgrims. It is a reminder that Angkor Wat is not isolated. It interacts with its environment, a living entity shaped by water, wind, and the rhythm of nature. Everywhere one looks, the details reward attention. Carvings of apsaras are everywhere, yet each is distinct. Hairstyles, jewelry, and poses vary subtly from one to another. These celestial dancers are not mere decoration, they embody divine grace, the subtle power of movement, and the eternal continuity of spiritual energy. In the quiet of the early morning, one can imagine them flickering to life, their laughter mingling with the rustle of palm leaves and the distant cries of birds. Beyond the central towers, the libraries and ancillary buildings tell another story. Though empty now, the niches in these halls once cradled manuscripts, sacred texts and scrolls that contained knowledge of ritual, astronomy, and cosmology. The silence of these spaces is profound, echoing the voices of generations who moved within their walls. Scholars, priests, and scribes devoted their lives to recording the teachings of their time, creating a bridge between human experience and divine wisdom. Even without the texts, the spaces themselves speak of order, intention, and the sanctity of knowledge. Angkor Wat's architecture is a marriage of geometry and spirituality. The alignment of the towers, the proportions of galleries, and the angles of causeways are all meticulously calculated. The complex reflects not only the cosmos, but also the ambitions of Suryavarman II, who envisioned himself as a ruler sanctioned by the divine. Here, stone becomes scripture, and architecture becomes ritual. Walking through the temple is a journey through both space and philosophy, an invitation to witness the eternal conversation between kings, gods, and artisans. As the day progresses, the jungle asserts its presence. Trees grow along the edges of galleries, roots twisting over stone, sometimes cracking walls but also lending them a quiet grandeur. Birds nest in towers, their songs adding a natural music that blends seamlessly with the human artistry. The encroachment of nature is not intrusion, it is collaboration, a dialogue between the living and the carved, a gentle reminder of impermanence and renewal. In the shadows, monkeys leap among columns, curious and unafraid, while the sunlight filters through the foliage in dappled patterns across the stones. Pilgrims approach the central sanctum with a reverence that has persisted for centuries. Their offerings are small but meaningful: flowers, incense, and whispered prayers. Each visitor participates in a ritual continuity that bridges past and present, human and divine. Inside the towers, one imagines the presence of Vishnu, the deity to whom the temple is dedicated, an eternal witness to devotion. The air carries the faint scent of incense, the warmth of human presence, and the weight of countless prayers, creating an atmosphere that is both sacred and serene. Beyond the physical beauty, Angkor Wat embodies cultural continuity. It was initially a Hindu temple, later adapted for Buddhist worship, reflecting the adaptability of spiritual practice and the coexistence of traditions. This layering of belief over belief has enriched the temple, adding depth to its art, architecture, and symbolic resonance. Each carving, each statue, each relief is a palimpsest, a record of centuries of devotion and change, yet remarkably unified in vision and intent. As the sun begins to set, the temple glows with warm hues, shadows lengthen, accentuating the reliefs and highlighting the depth of carvings. The reflections in the moat deepen, and the towers, silhouetted against the fading light, appear almost ethereal. Monkeys return to the trees, birds roost along the galleries, and the soft rustling of leaves becomes the temple's evening hymn. One can imagine ancient priests performing evening rituals, chanting sutras, and walking the same steps that pilgrims now follow, their voices blending with the sounds of nature in a timeless harmony. The night at Angkor Wat is an experience of stillness. Under the canopy of stars, the temple emerges as a monumental silhouette, vast and deliberate, guarding the sacred knowledge within. The interplay of moonlight and shadow transforms the reliefs into a quiet theater, where apsaras seem to glide in silvered light and celestial chariots appear to move imperceptibly across walls. Even in darkness, the temple exudes presence, a silent guardian of both spiritual and human legacy. Time here is non-linear. Centuries fold upon themselves, and the boundaries between past and present blur. One can feel the ambitions of kings, the devotion of priests, the labor of artisans, and the curiosity of countless pilgrims converging in a single, breathless moment. Angkor Wat is more than stone. It is memory, intention, devotion, and human aspiration rendered in enduring form. As dawn approaches again, the cycle of light and shadow begins anew. The towers glow softly with the first rays, the moat reflects the sky's changing colors, and the temple, ever patient, waits silently for the next visitor to walk its galleries and feel the same wonder that has inspired generations. It is a place where time stretches, where history whispers, and where the sacred is tangible, carved in every stone, reflected in every pool, and breathed in by every soul who treads its hallowed grounds. The Mohenjo-Daro Citadel, Secrets of a Forgotten Civilization. As the first light of dawn brushes over the dusty plains of the Indus Valley, the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro begin to reveal their secrets. From afar, the citadel rises subtly above the landscape, a testament to a civilization that flourished over 4,000 years ago, leaving behind the quiet echoes of its people. The city, meticulously planned, stretches across the horizon in straight lines and geometric perfection, an intricate dance of streets, buildings, and drainage systems that speak of remarkable foresight and human ingenuity. Walking among the crumbled bricks and weathered walls, one can almost hear the muted bustle of a city long silent, the hum of life, commerce, and ceremony that once filled the air. The streets of Mohenjo-Daro were laid out in a strict grid, running north to south and east to west with an almost mathematical precision. Each lane and alleyway suggests careful thought, evidence of planners who understood both utility and beauty. The residential blocks are interspersed with open courtyards, and the houses themselves exhibit a surprising level of sophistication. Flat rooftops, private wells, and small granaries hint at a society that valued both privacy and preparedness. The bricks, baked with care and standardized in size, show an early understanding of modular construction. Walking slowly along these ancient streets, one cannot help but feel the pulse of a civilization that prized organization, hygiene, and communal harmony. The Great Bath, perhaps the most famous structure within Mohenjo-daro, sits at the heart of the citadel, a monumental pool lined with finely fitted bricks, coated with a layer of bitumen to make it waterproof. Its steps descend gracefully into the deep water, suggesting ritual significance beyond mere hygiene. Water, the lifeblood of the Indus people, was central not only to daily life, but also to spiritual practice. One can imagine priests or community leaders standing at the edges, the quiet lapping of water accompanying chants, prayers, and the careful observance of sacred rituals. The bath reflects the sky, and in its stillness, it mirrors both the ingenuity and the spirituality of a culture that understood the power of design and symbolism. Across the city, a network of drains, covered channels, and soak pits underscores the advanced understanding of sanitation. Rainwater and waste were channeled efficiently, preventing stagnation and disease, a feat unparalleled in many other contemporary civilizations. As one peers into these ancient conduits, it becomes clear that the citizens of Mohenjo-daro valued not just comfort but public health. The meticulous layout of these systems hints at civic organization and a collective understanding that the well-being of the many depended on careful attention to detail. Each brick, each channel, each junction reflects a society deeply in tune with its environment and with the rhythms of daily life. Yet beyond the engineering marvels, there is evidence of artistry and culture woven into the city. Small statues of humans and animals, delicate pottery, and intricate seals engraved with animals and symbols point to a civilization that celebrated aesthetics alongside function. The seals, often depicting unicorn-like creatures or scenes of ritual, suggest a language of both commerce and belief, a system of communication that connected people across trade routes and generations. Holding one of these tiny artifacts, worn smooth by centuries of handling, it is easy to feel a tangible connection to those long-departed citizens. To imagine their hands shaping clay, painting figurines, or inscribing symbols that communicated both identity and faith. Commerce was likely a lifeblood of the city, with evidence pointing to trade networks that extended as far as Mesopotamia. The uniformity of weights and measures, the precision of scales and balances found in excavations, reveals a society that valued fairness, standardization, and the smooth functioning of markets. Goods moved along the streets, grains, textiles, beads, and pottery, each exchanged with care and ritual. The rhythm of trade would have infused life into the city, merchants calling out from shaded alleys, artisans hammering away in workshops, and citizens engaging in daily transactions that were as much social interactions as they were economic ones. Religious life, though still shrouded in mystery, appears intertwined with civic structure. Many scholars interpret the recurring motifs, trees, animals, and horned figures on seals and sculptures, as indicative of spiritual practices that honored both nature and deities. The interplay of human, animal, and divine in these artifacts hints at a society deeply attuned to balance, order, and the unseen forces of the world. One can imagine shrines tucked within homes, communal rituals performed in courtyards, and ceremonies that marked the rhythms of seasons, birth, and death, all performed with careful attention to harmony and ritual precision. At the city's edges, fortifications and elevated platforms suggest both protection and authority. Mohenjo-daro was not only a hub of daily life, but also a place where leadership exercised oversight, maintaining social cohesion, and perhaps overseeing the movement of water, the flow of goods, and the observance of civic rules. The elevated citadel provided perspective, both literal and metaphorical, a vantage from which the rulers could survey the city's functioning, ensuring order and stability in a civilization that prized structure above chaos. Despite its grandeur and careful planning, the city was not immune to mystery. Its ultimate decline and abandonment remain subjects of debate, leaving the ruins suspended in a liminal space between past and present. Was it flooding, shifting rivers, disease, or political upheaval that led the citizens to leave? Or was it a slow dissolution, a gradual fading of community life over generations? The silence that now envelops Mohenjo-daro adds a haunting quality to its sophistication. Every street, every brick, every artifact invites speculation, a conversation across millennia that refuses to conclude neatly. Exploring the residential quarters reveals insights into daily life. Kitchens, storerooms, and private wells paint a picture of domestic routines remarkably familiar to us today. Women likely tended to cooking, children played in open courtyards, and families gathered for meals, all within spaces designed for efficiency, comfort, and community. The standardization of home layouts suggests social cohesion, perhaps an early form of zoning, where artisans, merchants, and administrators occupied distinct but interconnected quarters. It is a vision of urban life that resonates, reminding us that even thousands of years ago, human needs, ambitions, and routines created complex, thriving communities. The city's granaries stand as silent testaments to both abundance and foresight. Massive structures with well-ventilated interiors hint at sophisticated agricultural practices and careful planning to store food for times of scarcity. One can almost hear the rustle of grain being poured, the conversations of overseers, ensuring equitable distribution, and the hum of activity that sustained a population that depended on both nature and human ingenuity for survival. Art and symbolism permeate even the smallest objects. Beads, bangles, and decorative items speak of a society with a keen sense of aesthetics and personal expression. These objects were not merely functional, they were statements of identity, taste, and status. The people of Mohenjo-Daro lived in a world where beauty, function, and meaning coexisted seamlessly, their daily lives infused with both practical and spiritual significance. Even in the quiet ruins, one can feel the rhythm of human activity that once defined Mohenjo-Daro. Footsteps along stone-paved streets, voices echoing in narrow alleys, and the soft clatter of tools in workshops create an auditory memory suspended in time. The city's layout, combining precision with adaptability, suggests that its inhabitants understood both the limitations and possibilities of their environment, shaping it carefully while respecting its rhythms and cycles. The citadel's elevated mounds, often interpreted as administrative centers or elite residences, hint at a structured social hierarchy. These spaces oversaw the life of the city, coordinating trade, agriculture, and ritual, ensuring that the machinery of urban life ran smoothly. They also likely served as symbolic centers, embodying the authority and vision of the city's leaders, reminding citizens of the presence and order of governance in their daily lives. Water, flowing through drains, wells, and the Great Bath, remains a central theme. It is more than a resource. It is a symbol of life, continuity, and connection. In every channel, every reservoir, one sees the foresight of a people who understood the delicate balance between environment and habitation, recognizing that a city's survival depends on both careful design and respectful coexistence with natural forces. The echoes of Mohenjo-Daro's people resonate in every corner. Though silent now, the city speaks of human ingenuity, adaptability, and the universal desire to build, create, and leave a legacy. Every brick, every artifact, every street carries a fragment of memory, a whisper of lives once lived in vibrant complexity. Walking among the ruins, one senses both the fragility and the resilience of human endeavor, the fleeting nature of individual existence contrasted with the enduring imprint of collective effort. As twilight descends over the plains, the citadel takes on a dreamlike quality. Shadows stretch across courtyards, and the jagged silhouettes of walls merge with the soft glow of the setting sun. The city seems to breathe with the memory of its people, a rhythm that pulses softly, inviting reflection and quiet awe. Mohenjo-Daro stands as both a monument and a mystery, a place where history is tangible and yet eternally elusive, a reminder that civilizations rise, flourish, and fade, leaving behind echoes that continue to speak across millennia. The night settles over the vast expanse of the Indus Valley, and Mohenjo-Daro rests under a velvet sky, its silent streets bathed in moonlight. Though centuries have passed, the city's spirit seems to linger, hidden in the shadows of crumbled walls, echoing across courtyards and narrow alleyways. Each brick, each stone, each artifact seems to hold a memory, a fragment of a civilization that mastered urban planning, engineering, and the subtle intricacies of daily life. The city's geometry becomes more than lines and angles. It transforms into a rhythm, a pulse that once dictated the movements, routines, and rituals of thousands of inhabitants. Venturing further into the residential quarters, one begins to uncover traces of domestic intimacy. Kitchens are revealed with soot-stained walls, clay hearths, and remnants of cookware, offering glimpses of meals prepared with care, possibly accompanied by quiet conversations and laughter echoing through courtyards. Bedrooms, though small, hint at a surprising concern for comfort and privacy. Personal belongings, meticulously stored in niches and chests, suggest a deep understanding of human needs, blending practicality with personal expression. Every home reflects an equilibrium between communal cohesion and individual identity, a society that thrived on both cooperation and self-sufficiency. The marketplace, once the heart of daily interaction, remains imagined in the spaces between buildings, the wider streets hinting at areas where merchants laid out wares of grain, pottery, beads, and textiles. The hum of commerce, the clatter of tools, and the animated discussions over goods are all silent now, yet the layout speaks volumes of a culture that valued order, fairness, and exchange. Weights and measures, found in countless excavations, indicate a sophisticated understanding of trade regulation and accountability. suggesting that the people of Mohenjo-daro created systems to maintain equilibrium within their economy. Religious life, though enigmatic, leaves an imprint on the very fabric of the city. Small altars, ritual figurines, and the repeated motifs on seals hint at a worldview where nature, community, and the divine were intertwined. Some seals depict horned animals, perhaps representing sacred forces or spiritual protectors, while others show human figures engaged in ceremonial acts, emphasizing a culture rich in symbolism and spirituality. It is easy to imagine quiet rituals in domestic spaces, larger communal ceremonies near open squares, and water playing a central role in both purification and reverence, especially near the Great Bath. Education and literacy, although limited in surviving evidence, appear embedded in the daily functioning of the city. The inscribed seals, small tablets, and symbolic carvings suggest that the inhabitants had a complex system of communication, a proto-writing that linked trade, religion, and governance. Perhaps scribes recorded transactions, priests inscribed prayers, and merchants used symbols to mark goods, creating an intricate network of knowledge that underpinned civic life. Each carved line, each emblem, reflects intelligence, purpose, and a desire to transmit meaning across time. The city's artisans, visible in the remains of workshops and finished artifacts, reveal a dedication to craft and aesthetic sensibility. Beads carved from semi-precious stones, pottery painted with intricate patterns, and figurines molded with careful precision speak to both skill and cultural expression. These creations were more than utilitarian, they were a reflection of identity, social status, and belief. The attention to detail indicates that art was woven seamlessly into daily life, a quiet celebration of beauty and human ingenuity, even in a world defined by practicality and survival. The public structures, from granaries to assembly halls, continue to fascinate with their scale and ingenuity. Granaries suggest a system of surplus management, ensuring that food was stored safely and equitably distributed in times of need. Assembly spaces hint at collective decision-making, perhaps forums where citizens gathered to discuss matters affecting the community. These spaces were not mere structures but embodiments of societal priorities, reflecting both foresight and organization in a city that balanced individuality with collective welfare. Exploring the outer districts, one encounters traces of workshops and storage facilities that hint at trade and craft specialization. Potters, metalworkers, and textile artisans likely clustered in designated areas, producing goods for both local use and long-distance trade. The standardization in tools, weights, and containers across the city demonstrates a commitment to consistency and quality, a subtle yet profound reflection of civic pride and social cohesion. Trade would have infused energy into these districts, connecting the city internally and externally, allowing ideas, goods, and culture to flow seamlessly along the arteries of urban life. Water management, perhaps the city's most remarkable achievement, illustrates the ingenuity of its inhabitants. Wells, reservoirs, and covered drains ensured not only the availability of clean water, but also the removal of waste in a manner that prevented contamination and disease. The city's planners understood the delicate balance between human habitation and natural forces, creating systems that harmonized with the monsoon cycles and river patterns. These innovations highlight a civilization that deeply respected environmental rhythms, crafting solutions that were both functional and enduring. As one moves toward the elevated citadel, the sense of oversight and authority becomes palpable. The raised platforms, likely reserved for administrative and ceremonial purposes, allowed leaders to monitor city life, ensuring order and continuity. These spaces also carried symbolic weight, projecting power and stability, while subtly reinforcing social hierarchies. From these vantage points, the city's intricate layout unfolds in geometric perfection, revealing the careful orchestration of urban life and the seamless integration of utility, artistry, and spirituality. Beyond its architectural and technological achievements, Mohenjo-daro evokes contemplation on human impermanence and resilience. The city, once vibrant and bustling, eventually succumbed to forces that remain partly mysterious: shifting rivers, climatic changes, or social transformations that led its citizens to abandon their homes. Yet even in abandonment, the city endures, speaking to us across millennia through bricks, artifacts, and silent streets. Each structure, each seal, each fragment is a message from the past, a reminder of human capacity to create, organize, and leave a lasting imprint. Archaeological discoveries continue to shed light on the people of Mohenjo-daro. Figurines reveal attire, hairstyles, and social roles. Jewelry hints at aesthetic preferences, and tools suggest daily tasks and occupational diversity. These objects, often small and understated, carry immense significance, offering windows into lives lived with both simplicity and sophistication. They tell stories of farmers tending fields, merchants engaging in trade, artisans shaping clay, and families celebrating rituals, creating a rich tapestry of urban existence. The city's spatial organization hints at governance without overt coercion. Streets, alleys, and communal spaces were designed for both efficiency and social interaction. Residences were standardized, yet allowed for personal expression. Markets facilitated trade while maintaining order, and public baths fostered hygiene and ritual observance. The citizens of Mohenjo-daro understood that a city's strength lies not only in monumental architecture, but also in the harmonious integration of human behavior, environmental adaptation, and civic foresight. Even today, the ruins invite reflection and imagination. One can trace the paths where children ran, merchants called out to customers, and priests conducted ceremonies. The stone and brickwork, though weathered, communicate a quiet dignity, a legacy of careful planning, artistry, and the pursuit of balance in urban life. Each fragment encourages contemplation on the universality of human experience, the need for shelter, sustenance, community, and meaning, transcending time and culture. Artifacts such as seals, pottery, and small statues suggest symbolic systems that connected the citizens spiritually and socially. They hint at a worldview where human actions were aligned with cosmic or natural orders, where rituals and daily life intertwined seamlessly. The repetition of motifs, whether animal, divine, or geometric, implies continuity in belief and culture, a shared understanding that united the community and guided individual conduct. The city's granaries, often monumental in scale, also serve as a reminder of foresight and collective responsibility. Stored grains, carefully ventilated and monitored, reflect a society capable of planning for scarcity, ensuring sustenance and stability. This careful management reveals a civilization attuned to the vagaries of nature, dependent on both agriculture and social coordination to survive and flourish. Walking through the streets today, one senses the rhythm of life that once pulsed here. Every turn reveals the meticulous care in city planning, the evidence of social organization, and the artistry embedded in everyday objects. The citizens of Mohenjo-daro left behind more than brick and clay. They left an enduring testament to human ingenuity, curiosity, and the desire to create a harmonious world. As sunlight wanes and shadows stretch across the ruins, the city seems suspended in time, bridging past and present. The delicate interplay between human ambition and the natural environment is apparent in every detail, from water channels to elevated platforms, from residential blocks to public baths. Mohenjo-daro remains both a mystery and a marvel, inviting those who wander its remnants to imagine the lives of those who once called it home. The enduring legacy of Mohenjo-daro lies not only in its architecture and artifacts, but in the stories embedded in its very structure. Each street, each courtyard, each carefully laid brick speaks of foresight, care, and the pursuit of an ordered, balanced life. Even as centuries pass and the city rests in silence, these echoes of human endeavor remain, whispering the tale of a civilization that, though vanished, continues to inspire awe and reflection. In contemplating Mohenjo-daro, one cannot help but marvel at the vision, discipline, and artistry of its creators. They built a city that balanced functionality with beauty, practicality with spiritual significance, and individual needs with collective welfare. Their legacy, captured in ruins, artifacts, and spatial organization, endures as a reminder that even in the face of time and change, human creativity, planning, and culture can leave a permanent mark upon the world. As the moon rises high above the Indus Plains, casting silvery light over the ancient citadel, Mohenjo-daro rests quietly, holding its secrets in the stillness. Yet in the minds of those who study, explore, and imagine its streets, the city lives on. Its people, their ingenuity, and their culture continue to resonate, a timeless testament to the enduring human spirit, whispering across millennia to those willing to listen. The Borobudur Temple, steps toward enlightenment. Rising from the lush green plains of central Java, the Borobudur Temple stands as a silent guardian of centuries, its massive stone terraces, layered like a cosmic mandala, reaching toward the heavens. The morning mist drifts through the surrounding volcanic hills, wrapping the temple in a veil of mystery, as if the very earth is whispering secrets of devotion, artistry, and human aspiration. Each stone, weathered by time and rain, tells a story of hands that carved with precision, of minds guided by spiritual vision, and of a society that sought to bridge the material world with the divine. To walk its terraces is to journey not only through space but through the inner landscapes of contemplation, devotion, and reflection. The temple's design is both architectural marvel and spiritual map, a three-dimensional representation of Buddhist cosmology. The base is adorned with hundreds of relief panels, each telling intricate stories from the Jataka tales recounting the past lives of the Buddha. These panels are not mere decoration, they are moral guides, lessons in virtue, and reminders of the transient nature of life. The stories unfold along the walls in sequences that guide the visitor from ignorance to enlightenment, from worldly attachment to spiritual liberation, each step offering subtle lessons hidden in stone. Ascending to the middle terraces, the human figures carved into the walls become more numerous, more engaged in scenes of everyday life, interwoven with myth. Monks, villagers, and celestial beings coexist in stone, interacting, teaching, and observing. One can almost hear the quiet conversations of the past, a monk instructing his disciples on patience, a mother carrying her child while offering a prayer, traders exchanging goods with a reverence that elevates mundane life into a spiritual practice. The carvings are not frozen images but living narratives, capturing movement, emotion, and intent with astonishing skill. Water, though absent from the stone itself, is implied throughout the temple's design. Drainage channels and terraces mimic rivers and streams, echoing the flow of life, thought, and karma. Visitors are guided by this subtle current, moving from one level to another, symbolically traversing the human experience. The outer terraces depict the world of desire, suffering, and moral complexity, while the higher layers begin to dissolve the boundaries between the human and the divine. The temple's journey is both vertical and inward, a meditation in stone that requires the observer's full attention and mindfulness. As one circles the stupas on the upper levels, the air changes subtly, carrying a weightless serenity. These bell-shaped structures, each housing a Buddha statue, are open to the sky, allowing sunlight to filter through perforations, casting patterned shadows on the terraces. The interplay of light and shadow creates a living mandala, a delicate dance that mirrors the impermanence and beauty of existence. The Buddhas themselves, serene and meditative, watch over the terraces with eyes half closed, inviting reflection and offering silent guidance. Their calm expressions evoke a timeless wisdom, one that transcends language, culture, and centuries. Each level of Borobudur carries its own lessons. The reliefs of the Karma Vibhanga at the base illustrate consequences, the law of cause and effect, and the moral trials that humans face. They are vivid, sometimes harsh, yet profoundly educational. Scenes of vice, crime, and suffering are balanced by depictions of compassion, generosity, and virtue, creating a comprehensive moral tapestry. The visitors of the past and present are invited to consider the path of their own lives, to measure action against consequence, and to move toward understanding with mindfulness. The temple's builders were more than architects, they were visionaries, combining geometry, symbolism, and spiritual insight into a singular creation. Borobudur's mandala design aligns with cosmic principles, reflecting the Buddhist concept of the universe in miniature. Each terrace is a concentric circle of experience, each level a stage of spiritual progress. The stones themselves were carefully chosen, their density and texture contributing to the stability and longevity of the monument. Even in its decay, Borobudur continues to convey its message, standing as a testament to human creativity, devotion, and resilience. The surrounding landscape adds to the temple's meditative atmosphere. Volcanoes rise in the distance, rivers meander quietly below, and lush rice paddies sway gently in the breeze. Monkeys, the silent companions of centuries, move across lower terraces, and the calls of birds echo between stone walls. This connection to nature reinforces the spiritual journey, reminding the observer that human life and the natural world are deeply intertwined. The temple is not isolated, but harmoniously integrated into its environment, a reflection of Buddhist philosophy in tangible form. Even the act of climbing the terraces is a form of meditation. Each step, carefully considered, is a movement toward awareness. Visitors are guided by the physical structure to slow down, observe, and internalize the lessons presented in stone. The path is deliberate, with every turn and stair contributing to an overarching rhythm of contemplation. It is a pilgrimage both external and internal, a convergence of body, mind, and spirit that is rare in architectural experience. Borobudur's stupas at the summit are capped with a grand central stupa, the pinnacle of spiritual symbolism. Here the earthly journey transforms into transcendence. The smaller stupas surround the central one, each containing a Buddha, emphasizing the multiplicity of enlightenment paths. The sun illuminates the apex, a metaphor for clarity, wisdom, and liberation. Observing this structure, one senses the scale of ambition and the profound intention behind every carved figure and stone block. The builders sought not only to honor the divine, but to guide humanity toward its highest potential. The reliefs themselves tell stories beyond morality. They depict processions, rituals, and ceremonies, capturing the essence of Javanese life in the 8th and 9th centuries. Women are shown in domestic settings, men at work or engaged in religious observance, and celestial beings oversee these earthly events. The carvings are exquisite in detail, folds of garments, expressions of thought, gestures of devotion, all meticulously rendered. Each panel is an invitation to pause, observe, and learn, to enter the rhythm of life as it was envisioned centuries ago. Restoration efforts over the years have revealed even more about the temple's original grandeur. archaeologists and historians have uncovered layers of lime plaster, pigment traces, and subtle carvings that suggest Borobudur was once vibrant with color, gleaming under the tropical sun. Gold leaf may have adorned certain statues, and the terraces might have been accented with painted motifs. The image of the temple in its original state evokes awe, imagining the shimmer of color and the sense of sacred presence that would have permeated the air, guiding pilgrims and visitors alike. Pilgrims continue to ascend Borobudur, following the same pathways as those centuries ago. Their journey is both physical and spiritual, echoing the intentions of the temple's creators. Devotional practices, circumambulation, and meditation align with the temple's design, reinforcing the lessons embedded in stone. Each visitor participates in a centuries-old continuum of reverence, reflection, and learning, connecting past, present, and future in an unbroken chain of human experience. The symbolism of Borobudur is multi-layered. It is a map of consciousness, a guide to ethical living, and a testament to human artistic achievement. The terraces, reliefs, stupas, and statues all work in concert to communicate profound truths about impermanence, desire, suffering, and transcendence. To move through the temple is to witness a civilization's understanding of the human condition, its hopes, fears, and aspirations carved meticulously into stone, destined to endure for millennia. Even the smallest details matter. The placement of a lotus, the orientation of a hand gesture, or the subtle curve of a figure's posture is imbued with meaning. The entire monument is a carefully choreographed experience, inviting viewers to observe, interpret, and internalize. In this sense, Borobudur is not just a building but a living lesson, a spiritual text rendered in 3 dimensions, where every stone contributes to a larger narrative of enlightenment. From dawn to dusk, the changing light transforms the temple. Shadows stretch across reliefs, creating an interplay of light and dark that emphasizes the cyclical nature of life. The terraces catch the golden hues of sunrise and the soft glow of twilight, each moment offering a new perspective. It is a reminder that the pursuit of understanding, like the temple itself, is continuous, shaped by time, reflection, and attentive observation. The Borobudur Temple, in its silent majesty, transcends mere physical presence. It is a conduit between the human and the divine, a repository of wisdom, and a mirror reflecting the aspirations of countless souls. The carvings, terraces, and stupas collectively guide the observer on a journey that begins in the material world and ascends towards spiritual realization. Each stone, each relief, and each statue is an invitation to step into the rhythms of life as envisioned by the ancient builders, to contemplate and to find one's own path toward enlightenment. Even centuries of exposure to tropical rains, volcanic eruptions, and human interaction have not diminished Borobudur's power to inspire. The temple remains a symbol of dedication, artistry, and faith, a reminder that human endeavor can create structures of timeless beauty and profound spiritual resonance. Every detail, from the geometric layout to the subtle gestures and reliefs, is evidence of a civilization that sought to harmonize human life with cosmic principles, leaving behind a legacy that continues to teach and inspire. Walking its terraces, one cannot help but feel the rhythm of centuries flowing beneath one's feet. The prayers, footsteps, and aspirations of generations echo silently, a testament to continuity and devotion. Each level brings one closer to the central stupa, a physical and metaphorical representation of enlightenment, while the surrounding stupas emphasize that the journey is both personal and communal. Borobudur teaches that the path to understanding is layered, deliberate, and ultimately transformative. In the stillness of the temple, one can almost sense the presence of its creators. Their vision, painstakingly executed, conveys a deep understanding of life, morality, and the human spirit. Borobudur is not only a monument to the divine, but a monument to human potential, imagination, and persistence. Its enduring form challenges us to consider how art, spirituality, and civic planning can converge to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The temple's location, atop a hill surrounded by fertile plains, is more than aesthetic. It situates Borobudur at the center of human experience and natural beauty, a vantage point where the terrestrial meets the celestial. Pilgrims and visitors are reminded of their place in the universe, their connection to the natural world, and the responsibilities inherent in living a moral and aware life. Every ascent is a meditation, every relief a lesson, and every step a chance to harmonize one's inner and outer world. As the day turns to night, the silhouette of Borobudur against the star-filled sky captures the imagination. The stupas, terraces, and central pinnacle blend seamlessly with the cosmos, echoing the temple's central message. Life is transient, understanding is cumulative, and enlightenment is both a journey and a destination. The shadows and light, the carved figures and open spaces, all converge to create a monument that is alive in spirit, offering quiet reflection, guidance, and awe to all who approach. Borobudur remains a beacon of cultural achievement, spiritual insight, and human ingenuity. Its intricate design, moral narratives, and architectural precision illustrate the depth of understanding possessed by its creators. To engage with the temple is to engage with the hopes, fears, and wisdom of an entire civilization, encapsulated in stone yet vibrant with life. The temple's silent majesty invites patience, observation, and contemplation, fostering a profound sense of connection across centuries. Even today, as pilgrims circumambulate the terraces and visitors trace the reliefs with careful attention, the teachings of Borobudur continue to resonate. The stories etched in stone provide guidance on ethical living, reflection on impermanence, and inspiration for spiritual growth. The temple's enduring presence is a bridge between the past and the present, between human aspiration and divine insight, calling all who walk its terraces to consider the nature of existence and the path toward enlightenment. The Borobudur Temple, with its layered terraces, countless reliefs, and serene stupas, stands not only as a masterpiece of architecture, but as a living guide to human thought, ethics, and spiritual aspiration. Every carved panel, every Buddha statue, and every carefully placed stone is part of a timeless narrative, inviting the observer to step into a journey of understanding, reflection, and awakening. In its stillness, Borobudur speaks louder than words ever could, a testament to human creativity, devotion, and the eternal search for wisdom. The echoes of the past resonate in every stone, in every carved relief, and in every contour of the stupas. The temple's story is not frozen, it is experienced, felt, and internalized with each visit. It offers lessons in morality, guidance for the soul, and a quiet reminder that beauty and purpose can endure beyond lifetimes. Borobudur, in its silent majesty, continues to guide, inspire, and awaken those who approach with attentive hearts and open minds, leaving an indelible impression on all who traverse its sacred terraces. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history's hidden wonders. If you enjoyed exploring these ancient secrets, please like the video and share your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that bring the past to life. We'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there.